I think that a lot of things we've already talked about, I suppose, can be considered reparative processes. So taking a critical look at our own discipline, our own methods of both teaching and research can form part of this. I think from my perspective, as someone who works on public memory and the history of public memory, particularly of difficult and contested pasts such as transatlantic enslavement, I think there's something important about deconstructing how histories have been remembered in the public realm. So how those public memories and mythologies have been constructed, who's been part of that process, including historians, but also through heritage discourses, through state apparatus, the way that certain past, such as empire and slavery, have been misremembered in public, how certain people have been either vilified or lifted up as heroes within that process, and how race has been constructed through acts of public memory. So I think that we need to deconstruct in order to build back better, I suppose. We need to really show the inner workings to understand how it has been possible to misremember something like empire for as long as we have, who's been complicit in those processes, and from there think about how we can challenge those kinds of narratives which do have such a fundamental impact on people's everyday lives.
Absolutely. I think this works in globally as well. I mean, again, I work on Southeast Asia, and there are very strong histories that have now been embedded in the post-colonial context that are very much focused on ethnic nationalism and very exclusionary to others. So we think about Burma and the Rohingya and the kind of histories of Muslims in Burma, or a real focus in Malaysia on certain ethnic groups as the inheritors of the nation. And these are histories that are rooted as well in colonial contexts of, dividing and ruling different ethnic groups and lifting up one ethnic group to others. So it can be very complex in global contexts, but I think the principle is the same in terms of the kinds of histories that get promoted, especially by the state, or promoted in public, that are focused on one ethnic group to the exclusion of others. And I think that is really some of the challenges in terms of thinking about this reparative history. How can we tell histories that are much more inclusive, that are much more attentive to the ways in which people have been marginalized and forgotten?
I think it's also about shifting out the way that we value different types of knowledge as well. I think there has historically been a tendency to value certain knowledge above others, to have a kind of artificial hierarchy of what is considered, reliable evidence for historians to draw from. And I think that part of the reparative process is disrupting that as well, and sort of valuing community knowledge, valuing knowledge that comes from creative praxis and different places as well. And I think a lot of historians do that, and that has been one of the biggest shifts in the discipline across the 20th century, has been particularly through the history from below movement, social history, cultural history. But I think it's something that we can embed a lot more, and perhaps embed a lot more in our teaching and the way that we sort of talk to students about how we know what we know about the past, how that's valued differently.